Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. And welcome to this week's reporter, Pascal Mariani, just back from Colombia. Pascal, great to see you. Pascal, of course, has been exploring this country, which many people believe to be at peace since President Santos, the former leader of the country, got the Nobel Peace Prize for resolving the conflict with the FARC rebels. But as Pascal has discovered, conflict continues. At the heart of that conflict, the illegal drug cocaine, which people grow sometimes in order just to make a living and eat. Pascal, this is all centred around the northeast of the country. Tell us about that region.
Yes, that's right. I was up in the region of Catatumbo in the north of Colombia, near the border with Venezuela. Like many of these frontier regions, it is an area where there are lots and lots of farms producing coca. At the same time, there are armed groups that compete for the control of production. All the elements of the current Colombian conflict come together there.
In his film, along with Juan Orozco and Gerald Bermudez, the situation in Colombia right now.
It's boom time for coca in Colombia. There have never been more lush and resilient coca plants spread across the country.
This is like a variation of Peruvian coca mixed with pajarita. That was the first coca that reached Catatumbo.
There are over 200,000 hectares of the illegal crop around Colombia. That's 20 times the size of Paris. Catatumbo in northeastern Colombia is one of the key producing regions.
It's our livelihood. This is how we feed our families, care for our kids, and get everything our family needs.
The crop generates significant profits, but it also puts them at risk. There's a raging dispute over this area. Two guerrilla groups, the ELN and the EPL, are battling for control of Catatumbo.
There was a clash between the ELN and the EPL last night in Miramontes. I heard one fighter was killed, but I don't know from which group, and a lot of people were wounded.
The ELN is the main guerrilla group operating in Colombia at the moment. The EPL is a local armed group that's flourished on the back of drug trafficking. To get around safely, farmers and human rights groups have formed a humanitarian caravan.
We're in Mesitas. It's an area in the Jacari district. We're on our way to visit some peasants who've been hiding here for days.
Over 9,000 farmers have been displaced by this conflict so far. On the day we visit, there are several hundred refugees in the village of Mesitas. They've had no help from the government.
How are things here?
It's tough, my friend. Really tough.
These families fled their small farms to escape the fighting.
There have been gunfights out where I live. I haven't been staying there because I got scared for the kids and everything. As an adult, you understand why people are dying, but the kids don't understand what's happening.
The refuge is surrounded by coca plants, like everywhere else around here. The fighting flares up over who will control the coca-rich territory. These clashes happen every day in Catatumbo. The ELN and EPL fighters can seem invisible, hiding out in the mountains. But there are some lurking just 100 meters from the village. Does this happen a lot?
Yes.
And at night.
Civilians sometimes get caught in the crossfire or struck by landmines. Community and farming leaders have been murdered. Dozens of guerrilla fighters have been killed since the start of this year. The Humanitarian Commission rushes in quickly during a break in the shooting to meet with refugees.
We demand that armed groups keep us out of this conflict, but we must be careful too.
People here are fed up of the fighting. Since coca arrived in the 1980s, the fighting in Catatumbo between guerrillas, paramilitaries and the police has seemed never-ending.
We're at the mercy of bullets. You might say those people seem calm in that situation. No, we're not calm. We're just worn down. We've spent so many years living with gunfights that we're used to it. We're tired.
The FARC put down their weapons last year, but the ELN and EPL have been trying to take over the spaces left behind by the old Marxist guerrilla group. After signing the peace treaty, many former fighters and their families moved to disarmament zones like Cano Indio in Catatumbo. Until as recently as 2016, coca was the FARC's main source of revenue.
It wasn't just us. In Colombia, everyone's living off coca in some way. We used to do it through a tax we'd impose on the workers who cultivate the illegal crops.
A national coca crop substitution plan was implemented with the peace agreement. It was meant to be a collaboration between the FARC, the government, and the United Nations, but things aren't working out quite as planned.
That used to be a field of coca, but the farmers replaced it with grass to make a pasture for livestock.
Around the Cano Indio disarmament zone, a pilot project's been implemented. 216 families signed up to the crop substitution plan. In return, the government promised them a monthly stipend and funding for alternative projects. A year ago, José's family signed up to the program and replaced all his coca plants within 2 months.
Look what we swapped the coca for corn. But we have to sell it so cheaply it feels like we're giving it away.
Each family's given €300 per month. But that was just one small part of the support package they were promised. The rest, like funding for alternative projects and technical assistance, has yet to materialise.
The farmers decided on their own to replace the coca crops, but no, the government hasn't done its part.
That's not something the FARC is responsible for. We're accompanying the process to make sure it happens, but the government is the one responsible for proper implementation.
The former FARC members convinced the farmers in their territory to give up their coca, but they're still waiting for the promised aid and rural development. It's Pedro Barón's job to speak to the frustrated Catatumbo farmers on behalf of the government.
After 20 or 30 years making a living from coca, people have a lot riding on this. There's a cultural connection to coca. In the midst of a volatile situation, people manage to live comfortably. It's easier to live from coca than from legal crops.
Farmers who've already signed up?
On this day in Tibu, it seems the pilot plan's shortcomings do nothing to deter the hundreds of farmers who sign up to the substitution plan. But they don't have much of a choice. Those who refuse risk forced crop eradication. These UN workers mark coca fields with green dots as they draw maps. The coordinator says the delays in project funding are due to red tape.
Like any pilot project, this is a laboratory where we're trying out a formula that doesn't exist in Colombia. There's never been anything like this, not this complex.
He goes to address a crowd of angry farmers.
To this day, Pedro, we haven't received anything in the region.
There's a deep-rooted issue underpinning all of this. Colombia's never had agrarian reform.
Raise your hands here if you have the legal deeds for your land. Who has them? No one. Legal recognition for lands is what we need.
In August, President Iván Duque took over from Juan Manuel Santos. He's opposed to the peace agreement and has threatened to end the substitution plan and return to strongman policies. These communities feel paralysed by all the uncertainty.
The ELN and the EPL are killing each other right now. So who will defend the coca? We'll have to defend it.
Many farmers have refused to sign the substitution agreement. Some of them are in this village, Vetas de Oriente.
We need a highway, education for our children. We need bridges for the roads and a health clinic.
We do want to sign, but only with real agreements.
Things they'll really do.
The community of Vetas is 3 hours from Tibu, on the border with Venezuela. You can only reach it by motorbike along dirt roads lined with coca. Alvaro is the president of the local Farmers Association. He owns several acres of coca fields himself.
There's so much killing, so much stress, so much. But we have to keep on going because you don't have a choice.
Before planting coca, Alvaro dreamed of orange trees. But without infrastructure or soil studies, other crops seem doomed to fail.
Look at that little orange plant that's just over a year old. I fertilize it as much as I do to coca.
Nothing grows quite like coca in these tired soils. Over the years, the seeds were genetically modified to withstand the most hostile environments. The farmers live close to their crops in modest farmhouses.
This is how we live. Look. They're wooden houses with dirt floors. We had to make the beds out of wooden slats. We're not wealthy here. We're just getting by with the coca. We're not rich or narco-traffickers here.
Small producers are at the bottom of the narco-trafficking food chain. They have to endure all the violent consequences without the juicy profits.
We'd like to change things, but the government won't guarantee us anything. In the peace treaty, there's a section that talks about a dignified life for peasant farmers. A dignified life means a home, health, education, electricity, water. The state has never helped us with anything.
The glitzy drug-funding mafias around the world starts here, with these farmers.
How's it going, boss?
All right, and how are things going for you? Don't worry, okay? Don't be scared.
It's here in these makeshift kitchens that the leaves are turned into coca paste.
It's a long process. It's not easy, like the government says.
On the back of growing demand in Asia, cocaine continues to boom around the world. And like any market, supply adapts to demand.
The buyers want it to be dried and white like this.
Days of work produce these 2 kilos of paste. It will barely be enough to pay all the workers. The farmers here don't like talking about who's making the real money, the drug traffickers.
There are people who arrive, outsiders, and they buy it in the farm. We don't know who they are.
The army could come in at any minute to rip up the crops or spray chemicals over the fields, wiping them out, as the new government has threatened. In the meantime, the coca business will continue as usual for those whose livelihoods depend on the illegal crop.
Our reporter Pascal Mariani is still here. Pascal, thank you for that amazing look at what's happening right now in Colombia. Do we presume that the war against drugs is lost?
Well, it's possible for someone to conclude that after 30 years of the fight against drugs, successive Colombian governments have not managed to stop the cultivation. On the contrary, there is a record level. More than 200,000 hectares are now under cultivation. For more than 30 years, the Colombian government has been under pressure from the United States to reduce the cultivation of coca. All the politicians have tried, and in reality, they have attacked the symptoms of the problems and not the causes deep down. The real problem in the Colombian countryside is the state is absent, and there has never been significant rural reform.
And of course, in some way, people need to grow a crop to live. Cocaine can be very profitable. It makes money. There's a practicality about it. Now, as well as growing things, there's an issue about glyphosate, which is already causing controversy in Europe and across North America, but also in Colombia.
So one of the methods being used in Colombia to combat the cultivation of coca is to physically eradicate the plants. Since the 1980s, authorities have been using aerial spraying of glyphosate. It was suspended in 2015 because of the doubts over the potential dangers to people's health. But the new government of Ivan Duque has announced that it is committed to physically removing coca plantations using herbicides. But there are a number of side effects of doing this. I spoke to one poor farmer who said his fields have been sprayed with glyphosate on and off for more than 20 years, and his fields are now barren.
This is land treated with glyphosate. Not even grass will grow. Coca is a strong plant, but it has trouble growing here too. Look at how bad this is. So, on the plot of land that isn't too affected, we grow coca over there.
So Duque, the current president, has inherited, obviously, something from Santos, who got lots of credit for getting the Nobel Peace Prize and resolving the problems with the FARC, but clearly problems are still there, which doesn't look good for Colombia as a whole.
At the moment, Colombia is going through a difficult period. It's been 2 years since the signing of the peace declaration, but the country is going through a post-conflict transition. The problems are still very much present. There is still so much coca being grown, cultivation often controlled by armed groups who fight each other. There has also been the appearance of new armed groups alongside the continued influence of FARC guerrillas. At least in the border regions, Colombia is once again plunged into conflict.
Indeed, at the heart of that, cocaine, this illegal drug which is all over the world, coming from Colombia. Pascal, thank you very much indeed. Pascal Mariani's report. You can see it again, of course, via our website, france24.com. This is Reporters on France 24. Stay with us.